this pumpkin at Target a few weeks ago, and when I brought it home, I noticed something that a lot of other buyers also noticed, which was that it looks nothing like it does on the tag when it's lit up. I couldn't test it in the store because it didn't come with batteries, but even though I was a little bit put off by how bad it looks when it's lit up, I still wanted to try and figure out if there's a way that we can get it to shine more true to what's advertised. So to start off, let's break down why this pumpkin looks so bad when it's lit up. There's actually a two-part problem in the way this light looks, and part of it is just due to the fact that the expectation is already set by how it looks on the tag, which shows that it's this nice glowing blue all throughout. So our first problem comes from the fact that the light itself is a warm-toned yellow. Pair that with the blue of the pumpkin itself, and you're gonna get a color that shines through looking green. There is just no physical way you can make a blue pumpkin light up blue when you put a warm-colored bulb in it. The other part of our problem, which is what most reviewers had complaints about, the mold itself just isn't blown very well. I don't actually know what happens inside of the mold whenever the plastic is being blown into it, but it makes sense that if the middle is the part that's being stretched out, then the excess is going to accumulate on the top and the bottom. This flaw isn't really that obvious in orange jack-o'-lanterns and things like that because, like we mentioned before, the light that they're being illuminated with is a warm color, so it kind of helps blend out that imperfection. But in this case, our contrasting colors make that flaw so much more apparent. So now that our problems have been outlined, here's my blueprint for how we could potentially fix it. We're gonna attempt to think smarter, not harder here. To make the blue pumpkin shine blue, the quickest fix is to put a blue bulb in. This is the one time I will say that a blue LED will fix our problem. I will not get into the major beef that I have with blue LED lights, but just know that it is there, and I don't make this compromise often. I already have a color-changing bulb, but I still need a lamp to screw that into. There's probably a way to do this without completely changing the design of the thing like this, but I'm working with what I have, and the pros for me already outweigh the cons of leaving the pumpkin as it is, so I'm gonna go get what I need and lay out my supplies. First, our offending fail pumpkin, then the professional grade acrylic paint, which was unequivocally the most expensive part of this project, but we'll get into that later. Next up, the perfect lamp from the thrift store, as well as the color-changing bulb. I also threw in some red paint that I own and a beauty blender to apply the paint. As I fight for my life to cut the zip tie off this lamp, let me tell you about it. It was almost kind of scary how well it fit what I needed it for. It's just the right size, it even looks pumpkin-y, it didn't come with a bulb or a lampshade, which was the craziest part because, yeah, all I needed was the base. Just the fact that it hit all this unspoken criteria I had in my head without trying was kinda eerie. Once I defeated the zip tie, I cleaned the lamp with alcohol to get that thrift store grime off. The silver on its own actually goes with the teal just fine, but the whole reason I got this pumpkin was so that I could color coordinate it with all the other orange pumpkins and decor I have. I am a true believer in orange and teal being a supreme color combo, as evidenced by the array of mid-century atomic things that I own, so I had to buy that orange acrylic paint. Like I mentioned, this was the most expensive part of the project for me, but it does not have to be for you. Liquitex is a professional grade acrylic paint, and I'm a brand loyalist for no reason, so I spent the 20 bucks on it. I actually think an orange spray paint would give you a smoother finish, but personally, I would never use spray paint for anything else, whereas with Liquitex, I can use it for any other type of painting project. So how you do this part is entirely up to you. You could paper mache over the lamp base with orange tissue paper, or borrow some paint from a friend or neighbor. There are so many options and ways to do this that can save money. This is just what made the most sense for me and for how I tend to use art materials. I'm keeping mine super simple. I'm not going to bother too much with shading or anything like that. However, I did comparison with some of the pumpkins I do have, and I noticed that some are more red and some are brighter orange, so that's where I decided to mix some red into my orange for the second coat. That being said, I did not need to use that much orange paint, and I am crying rewatching this. Oh, $20 paint. I did end up mixing a tiny bit more red in as I went along because it didn't look that different, and then I set about rubbing my messy handiwork off the socket and decorative gold piece, and then I remembered I wanted to paint over the gold anyway, so I just did that instead of wasting time with alcohol Q-tip. Fun fact, this Liquitex is even older than I am. It's from when my mom was in college in the 90s, so with this paint being nearly 30 years old, I am astounded that it still does anything at all. It gave me a completely opaque layer over that gold bit and all of my little stray bits of paint, so I'm pleased with it. As that's drying, I need to figure out how to get the pumpkin to sit on top of the base. I really thought I could just pop the battery pack and light out, but boy did I struggle! Clearly it's made so that it can be popped out, but I don't know why I struggled so much with this. I should title this one, Artist Easily Defeated by Plastic Zip Ties and Battery Close Tabs. With the battery pack now out of the way and limbs ungouged by screwdrivers, I wanted to figure out whether I could fit a regular lampshade support in it. I don't know about you, but I don't keep spare lampshades around, so I grabbed some wire and started making my own. I realized pretty quick that if this wire is easy enough to shape with my fingers, I probably couldn't use it for the final product, just because even comparing it with the wire and the lampshade, it's really, really soft. But I went ahead and finished it off anyway because I just really believed that it could work. In the end, it was super uneven, but the light bulb actually fit in it and stayed, so I thought the end was nearing and this project would be a nice quick fix. I mean, the thing might be a little hard to get the jack-o'-lantern on and off of, but once it's on, when am I gonna take it off again, right? And it may need extreme balancing skills to stay upright and forward-facing, but if I just don't put it under the AC vent, it'll be fine, right? I don't know, I wasn't super about it, so I floundered around to something else to make me feel slightly more productive about this project and started painting the electrical cord black too. To be fair, the white was not doing it for me anyway, but yeah, I can't guarantee I didn't just start doing this because I didn't know how to proceed after my wire theory failed. Once I finished messing around with all of that, it finally occurred to me that I probably should have started by testing whether the blue light would even look good in the jack-o'-lantern or not. Because if it still looks ugly, then all of this paint was for nothing. So with that being said, let's see exactly what it looks like. Oh, that's not showing up right on camera at all. So in real life, this looks perfect, basically. I haven't even changed the color of the bulb to blue or anything yet, but this looks great. It doesn't have the issue with the lines on the top or the bottom at all. Now granted, I do have the jack-o'-lantern itself set on top of the bulb, like it's resting on the bulb right now. If I do move the jack-o'-lantern to where the light bulb is in the middle of it, it does shine through a lot clearer. It's not as blue. Which won't be a problem whenever I actually change the color of the bulb, but it does affect like the brightness of it. One other thing I want to do is I want to try and see if the wire lampshade will look good in there or not, because at this point I am debating just going out to the thrift store and buying a lampshade to disassemble and use instead, because the wire I got is not strong enough to support the thing. But just for a test to see how it'll look, let's try. Blind everybody. This would be smarter. Okay, yeah, that's what I didn't want. So yeah, you can see the wire base through the pumpkin, and it's not cute. But it's fine, because that saves me another trip to the thrift store and another $3. So I think what I'm gonna do now, I do have an idea for something that I want to try, which we'll get into in a second. But now I'm kinda in the middle on what I want to do. Obviously the wire support is not gonna work, right? But I really like the way it looks when it's just resting on top of the light bulb itself, right? Like, look. That looks so cute. This is like picture perfect image of those jack-o'-lantern blow molds, like the vintage ones from around the 1960s, where it's just like a stack of hay with the jack-o'-lantern head on top. Like, that's what this reminds me of. I don't know if anybody else thinks of that, but that's what I think of. So with the spacing like this, I think it's perfect. But the problem there is that you kind of have to like wriggle your hand inside to turn it on and off. And that's kind of awkward. So I do think, despite how cute this looks, I am gonna have to raise it up a little bit just so that the switch is a little bit more accessible. One other issue with having it resting on the light bulb itself is that even though it's an LED, it does still get a little bit warm, and I don't think I'm gonna be leaving the lamp on that long, but I just don't want the plastic of the blow mold to be resting on that for an extended period of time. So that's why we're gonna figure out some type of way to get this elevated. So my theory for this new attempt: if I can't support the pumpkin from the top, maybe I can support it from the bottom. I'm taking the plastic packaging from a set of headphones and measuring out a circle of it that's big enough to set the pumpkin on top of. This all hinges on whether this plastic is sturdy enough to even hold it, but we won't know until we do it. Also, ignore the fact that I could not find a marker thin enough to fit inside this compass. A pencil wouldn't show on the plastic, so I had to use a paintbrush, and it sucked. I don't know what this compass is actually intended to be used for, but I'd like a word with whoever made it. Where's my tiny metal stake that is meant to go in the support end? This thing slid around everywhere and made this so much more of a nightmare than it needed to be. Then I measured the width of the socket just above the switch and traced a circle that is definitely not that size onto the plastic, but it's fine. Cutting the circle out was a breeze until I started the painstaking process of cutting out the middle circle. I didn't want to cut it all the way out because I wanted the extra plastic to kind of act like a grip and help cling to the socket, so I really wanted to avoid accidentally cutting it too deep, or else it would be too loose and it would just spin around the socket. None of this was hard, by the way, just annoying. Even by the time I managed to get the hole wide enough to fit, the plastic wouldn't sit flat, so I had to cut it in a millimeter at a time until it did. But finally I got it to sit right, and all that was left was to figure out some way to dress up the poor bare neck of the thing, and I opted for some glittery black tulle that I thrifted back at the beginning of the season. You can make a bow really easily by wrapping the material around your hand a few times and then scrunching it up in the middle and winding the excess tail around it so it doesn't come apart. This was the nice thing about using tulle because it wanted to cling to itself anyway, so it wouldn't come undone as easily. I futzed around with it a lot and ended up redoing my bow like 5 different times, fluffing it up different ways and all that stuff, and I gave it 2 tails, like bows usually have, and I snipped the ends in a zigzag shape. But that ribbon is on and it's finally done, so hey, look at it! I am so happy with how this thing turned out. Basically, all the problems that I outlined in the beginning were fixed by changing the color of the light. And yes, as you could see in my display at the end, I do actually own 2 of them. I ended up going out and buying another one for this project because, go figure, as soon as I told my husband that I wanted to do this, he said that he likes the original light better because it looks more nostalgic and retro to him. So I ended up just buying another one, and now we each have one that makes us happy. That being said, here's the final price breakdown based on how I did this fix. The jack-o'-lantern was $5, the acrylic paint by Liquitex was $19.99, and the lamp base was $3.50. I already owned the red and the black acrylic paint, the sponge, and the LED bulbs, so my total ended up coming out to $28, and that is literally just because I brought help! I'm not from New Zealand. And that's all just because I bought another pumpkin and the professional grade acrylic paint. If you bought one of these pumpkins too and you're just looking for a quick way to spruce it up, you can totally do it cheaper just by borrowing the paints from a friend, looking for LEDs on sale, all those kind of things. So really, even my total for this could have been as cheap as $3.50 because the lamp base was the only thing that I needed to buy. I really also could have just gone and asked a friend if they had paint, but I didn't. I don't really have any complaints about it. For as tacky as it is, I really love how well the plastic support plate works. As I was working, I noticed that it looked a lot like a DVD, so I compared the two, and I found that they were basically the same size. So if you have like spare DVDs or CDs that just don't work that well anymore, if you've got the proper power tools, you could probably cut out the center of it to however big you need, or at the very least use it to trace your circle, because that compass, man. I have never had a compass work so poorly that I had to replace the pencil with a paintbrush. But whatever. Anyway, I love the plastic support. I'm just glad that it worked and that it got the pumpkin to the correct height and that it's basically invisible. The one thing that I'm just kinda about is the bow. I feel like I probably could have done a couple more rounds of the tool around my hand because it's just a little bit transparent to me. Plus when you set it against like a dark background like this, it kind of disappears. So maybe a proper ribbon or something that's just like a solid color would look more uniform. It also made an absolute mess of glitter as I was messing around with it, so anything that I do in the future is not gonna have any glitter on it. I'm not dealing with that again. I did end up using too much paint, but the paint job turned out fine. I think it looks great. The only thing that's left to do is to seal it, so I'll probably just seal that before I put it away for the end of the season. And I'm just gonna use Krylon for that because that's what I have. That's all I have to say about it. I will mention that teal pumpkins are apparently meant to signal that you're handing out allergen-free or toy-based treats. I don't know how widespread that is. I didn't know about it until we were in Target looking at these, but I feel like for that purpose, it does make more sense to have a pumpkin that shines true to that color. You can still put it in your window if you're worried about the electrical cord getting wet or things like that, and people will still know. In any case, it's a really cool color for Halloween, and I'm just glad that it's in vogue. But yeah, I hope this gave you some inspiration, and I hope you can make something interesting if you also bought this and found it kind of disappointing when you brought it home. Halloween has always been a very DIY holiday to me, and it just makes me really happy to be able to keep that spirit alive with things like this. So I hope your spooky season is going well, and I will see you next time.